Howdy everybody, Nathan Donnelly with Northwest Resilience. It's been a few months since I put any videos up, so I thought I'd jump back in for our current event, the big pandemic. I hope you're doing well with that wherever you live, whatever country you're in. If it hasn't gotten to you yet, then I would suggest you start taking it seriously. It came to my region a few weeks ago. And luckily I live on a small island off the coast of Washington, and it hasn't seemed to make it onto the island yet. We've had 35 people tested and no positives yet, so let's keep that number the way it is. But I live in a small community that's mobilized, and we've been practicing. So I want to I'm making a small series of videos about disaster preparedness in general and this pandemic in particular. And this video is going to be about risks. What does it mean potentially to have this happening in our communities? And since I've kind of been going through it for the last few weeks, but still off to the side watching it happen from our little island here, I've got a bit of input. And I would recommend you check out my other videos that I'm putting out with this as well. I just did one about fear and respect, and how that's two things we need to take a look at in our culture right now in dealing with this pandemic. This one is going to be more about risk assessment. Sounds like a Coast Guard chopper passing by. I don't live too far from the water here, so there's an airport nearby too. Pardon the noise. So risks with the COVID-19 illness. The illness itself is characterized by upper respiratory problems and a fever. So dry cough, problems breathing, a fever, that sort of thing. A runny nose isn't really part of it. Diarrhea is not part of it. Vomiting is not part of it. Those are all flu and common cold things. And it's really an upper respiratory problem. It's pneumonia. It's fibrosis in your lungs. It's an area of that. So if you've all of a sudden gotten a runny nose, it's March. So happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way. But that's not unusual. I was going through some boxes last night through my own preparations to get some stuff stored away, and some of the clothes were kind of old and moldy and needed to be washed, so I was breathing that in, and I ended up with a pretty good runny nose all night because of it, and allergies basically. So that's the other thing about being in March, is the runny nose is not really part of it. If you find yourself in one of these 3 or 4 categories, that being this affects people disproportionately who are old, so 60 and over is typical, although people have been getting very sick in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, but 60 and over is a big part of it. If you've ever been a smoker, that played a big role in China. Men over 65 or over 60 years old, 3/4 of them or 2/3 of them are smokers still in China. It's not as big a deal in the United States, but it might be for you. So if you are a smoker, might be a good time to think about quitting again. And another one that I recently learned that has been a problem in China is obesity. Obesity is a high risk factor for COVID-19. So I don't know what you can do about that right now, but it's something that might put you on high alert if you happen to be in that state. And 4th one is if you're immunocompromised. This is a pretty big one. There are a lot of people of all ages in the United States that are immunocompromised. We've got all kinds of funny things going on with our digestive systems and our immune systems these days, and people who look perfectly young and healthy can actually be really struggling with something that you don't have a clue about. So when you add up those factors, particularly if obesity ends up being a big one 45% of the United States is obese. This is obesity ground zero for COVID-19 if that ends up being a big problem. I just learned about that risk factor this afternoon. Before that, I was thinking about my own community, the island I live, or the county I live on, rather. The median age here is 58. Quite a few people come here to retire, and that's just 2 years off from the 60 years and older high risk group category. So add to that immunocompromised, we're easily over halfway. Add to that obesity, we're way over halfway. So that's kind of, that worries me for my own community. I'm 40 years old. I'm strong. I'm healthy. But I used to personally be immunocompromised. Before I was out on a loan, I was dealing with a lot of rheumatoid arthritis problems, and I to this day can't really get vaccines because my immune system is so robust it wants to rip my body apart, and I feel like hell anytime I get a vaccine. So that is one of the things that has been making it hard for people who get infected, is they have overreactive immune systems like myself, and that immune system reaction is like your body tearing itself apart, and that has caused a lot of problems with COVID-19 that I am understanding from China so far. So if you're in one of those four categories or multiples of those four categories, really take this darn seriously, and do something about it. And what I want to talk about next is what that might be. You need to organize some help. This is a disease where basically they're asking us to be hermits and hold up in our homes, and I don't fully agree with that. I obviously live in a very rural area. I'm actually looking at my house right there. I have the opportunity to step out off my porch and be in the woods pretty quickly and get some sunlight. Vitamin D is really important. Being in nature, fresh air, those are all really important things for being a healthy individual who's not going to get sick. I don't think that staying indoors indefinitely is going to do you any good. So if you can go outside and not risk coming into contact with surfaces and air that other sick people might be breathing and or touching, then take every opportunity you can to get out and go for a walk. I just recently committed to going for a good long walk every single day, unless I'm going for a jog. And it's been a great decision. It's been really nice lately. So organize, get some help. Let people know you're going to need a little bit of help for somebody to bring you a bag of groceries or whatever it will be. Somebody who can say, come up with a plan where they knock on your door and leave some bags at the bottom of it or something like that, and you're able to deal from there. But you're going to have to come up with a plan. The old Chinese proverb, planning is best done in advance. Obviously that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. We don't do it very much. We don't plan for these things very well. So think about what you're going to need to do. Hopefully you've got some friends or family nearby that aren't in a high-risk category that you can count on, that you trust, that you can arrange something like that from. If you don't think you do, put it out on Facebook. One of your 600 friends is probably going to say, hey, yeah, I'm there for you. If you can get 10 of them to do that, all the better. But plan for that now. If you're living in Seattle right now, even though it's already occurring, you might still be able to make that happen. If you're somewhere where it hasn't really come and been a big thing yet, then great, get ahead of it. We are not getting ahead of this thing, and you as an individual can. Supply lines is another thing I'm worried about. As a disaster preparedness instructor, in my area, we are dependent on a ferry service in our islands to come out here, and this is a very high earthquake, tsunami prone area. So It's very possible that we have a very large earthquake here, and it causes a lot of damage to either the mainland infrastructure or the ferry system, and we are not getting goods and services coming from the mainland here for a good long while, depending on how bad the earthquake is. So in San Juan County, we recommend minimum a month of food and supplies so you can shelter in place in your own home and weather whatever problems might happen. Right now, they're telling us in the news not to buy more than a week of food, and that's because they don't want to have a big run on everything, and then all of a sudden all the shelves are bare. Um, I've heard that America pretty much has about 2 days of food on reserve in its grocery stores, etc., all over the country at any given time. So even a week, if everybody was to do it, is not actually possible. Hopefully, you've been building up to this point and you're doing well. I know I personally am not as far along as I would like to be, because I just had a series of kind of minor catastrophes in my own life that I really needed to lean on my own preparations and ate quite a bit of the food. And I've been building back up again. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, but 2 weeks ago I sure wasn't. So do what you can. If you're lucky enough to be in an area where people have not really started to move as a herd towards the grocery stores, then get out there and do what you can to stock up. Do not buy more than you need for your given period of time. Do not buy a whole pallet of Purell, okay? That's going to be needed out in the world to prevent this from spreading. Don't get 1,000 N95 masks. Get enough for you and your family. Chances are that's going to overdraw the system still, because it's just not a very good system. But when you live in a city of millions of people and 1% of them decide they need a lot of toilet paper, well, that 1% can clean out your entire supply. So get ahead of it. You know, it's kind of like smoothing that curve that they talk about with the infection rate. If you can smooth that curve of getting your supplies in, or hopefully you've already gotten them, then all the better. The kind of supplies that you're going to want to get in. Food is a big one. Everybody's talking about beans and rice, and they always have with disaster preparedness. You know, starches are great. They store super well. They're obviously a lot of calories. I have a little bit of experience with starvation after my alone experience last winter, and I personally have lost over 60 pounds from a lack of food. Um, Calories are important, but they're not the end-all be-all. It is important to bring those things in if you can, but they will keep you alive as kind of a sickly zombie at best. You're not going to be thinking well, your immune system is not going to be strong on beans and rice, and you are probably going to be another target for this virus. So if in addition to that, or maybe even instead of some of that, you can be bringing in very nutrient-dense superfoods, things like cacao nibs, dried goji berries, chia seeds, maca, all these things they're compact, they're super nutrient dense, they're full of minerals. Cacao is the most complex food known to man, okay? It's a multivitamin. So if you can get some of that stuff in, it travels well, it stores well, and it's going to keep this thing working really well, which is very important in a stressful situation. Like I said, I lost about 60 pounds when I was on alone, and my brain, was sharp as a whip the whole time, because I was getting minerals in me. I was eating rose hips. I was even eating caribou antlers out there, but I was doing what I needed to get the vitamins and minerals in me too, not just the calories. And since I went without the calories, I should have been a lot worse off than I was, but I was very mindful of that other stuff. Medicines. If you are somebody who takes heart medication or any kind of medication, or you even have prescription eyewear, get what you're going to need to go for a few months. I listened to a gentleman earlier today who described this event not as a blizzard, but as a winter. We're not going into a corona blizzard, we're going into a corona winter. This is a multi-month event by any measure. Under the best circumstances, we're going to be going into this, well into summer. So um, get any extra prescription meds you can right now. Eyewear, like I said, anything like that. Hygiene is another thing. People already nailed the toilet paper, I guess, pretty well. Um, but, a couple extra bars of soap, probably not a bad idea. A thing of bleach, a gallon of bleach, have that under your sink. Things like that last for a really long time. Baking soda, vinegar, things that have a lot of different uses. Those are all cheap. They all store well and they store long, and they're easy to get in. And a lot of those things are not on people's radar. So if you walk into a store and you see bare shelves, not all the shelves are bare. People are going in for that toilet paper, their beans, and their rice, and you might find that the other stuff that's actually more important is more available. Taking care of hygiene, I think this one is in the forefront of everybody's mind because of the nature of this particular event. But other disasters like earthquakes and particularly tropical storms, hurricanes, and all that. It's not the event itself that kills people. It's the weeks and the months afterwards of people getting sick. Hygiene is the number one killer of people in a great number of events. So taking care of that, making sure that you're able to produce your own water. Where I live right now, not only is my ferry system dependent on a small group of people to keep it running, but our power system is as well. We buy our power from the mainland, and we have our own power co-op in the county. And I shudder to think what would happen if somebody went into work there and all of a sudden, half the company had to be quarantined. Would the lights stay on? I don't know. But I would like to know that I don't need them to stay on in order to weather the event. So water production is a big piece of hygiene, so do what you need to do with that. There are chemical and heat and filtration methods of producing clean water. I recommend having multiple options. As a permaculturist, you don't let any one thing that's super important be supported by only one leg. You want to have at least a three-legged stool for something like that. So heat's a great way to do it if you can boil water. If you can filter water, that's great. If you can treat it chemically or with grapefruit seed extract or something like that, that's all great too. Hedge your bets. There's a lot of cheap ways of doing that. Other thing with hygiene, you know the drill. Just bring in what you need to and have a little bit more of it than you normally would around the house if you haven't gotten that already. If you have enough already, don't buy more. Leave it for the people who need it. Hygiene is the thing that's going to keep this from spreading like wildfire even more than it already is. Sanitation, another thing. Where I live, we don't have gravity water. We have to have our water moved in pumps. So when the power goes out, if it goes out, I might not be able to flush my toilet. I might not be able to turn on my sink. I won't be able to take a shower. Okay, those are all important things that need to happen on some level. So dealing with human waste, I'm a great fan of the Humanure Handbook. It's a brilliant book that's written on the process of composting human waste. And the author, whose name escapes me at the moment, has put it online for free for anybody who wants to download it. The Humanure Handbook. Check it out. There's a 5-gallon bucket system for doing a composting toilet that I have used for years outside of disaster times, and it works very well, and it's free to do. So I would recommend checking that out. First aid. Might be a little bit late to line this up right now since we're not all meeting in groups, but if you haven't taken a first aid course before or recently, you should probably look for when the next one is going to be after this all blows over. You are never going to feel more hopeless in your life than holding somebody in your hands who's maybe bleeding to death and you don't know what to do about it. All you need to do is take a first aid course and you probably know what to do about it. So take that very seriously. Look for where the first aid courses are in your area. Schedule yourself for one, maybe 6 months out in the future after this is all over, and make sure that you take one every couple of years. It's a really good one. I take one every year because I've been training the Youth Conservation Corps people out here, and it's just part of our staff requirements. And every time I find it's valuable, even though I do it annually. So take first aid and get a good first aid kit put together. You can buy good first aid kits. The company Outdoor Research I used to work for made excellent ones. I believe they probably still do. I recommend them, but I also recommend going through that, getting on the Red Cross website on what makes a good first aid kit, and buying the extras. Going to your local pharmacy or drugstore, and getting those extra packages of band-aids and gauze and a tourniquet, things like that. Learning how to use those things, and having one in your vehicle, having one in your home, and having smaller ones for your backpack, your bicycle, your kayak, or anything like that. I'm a big fan of having first aid kits, and I'm a really big fan of giving them as gifts. I mean, how cool is that to give somebody a present that might save their life or let them save somebody else's life? First aid kits are a brilliant way to do that, and I'm just a big fan of doing that. So Outdoor Research was the company I mentioned earlier, but REI also sells them. There's a number of outdoor producers that sell good first aid kits, and like I said, I kind of like to have a modular system, small, medium, large, for the backpack, the vehicle, and the home. Cleaning products, I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Get whatever it is you like to use. I am not a fan of harsh chemicals at all, or poisons in or near my home, so I lean more towards the vinegar and the baking soda thing, but I do own a big old jug of bleach underneath my sink, and excuse me, and I think there's some value in having that. A lot of those, like bleach, will also allow you to store large quantities of water and keep it safe and clean for months at a time. So learn how to do that. Let's see. So that was kind of like the risk of our supply lines going down and what you might want to do still if they do go down. Even if they don't go down, like I said earlier, they're just not robust enough to meet the need of a whole country or community or city trying to all of a sudden be preppers. Again, if it hasn't come to your town yet, get out there before it does, because it will be too late at that point. Might be too late already. Barring that, pick up as many skills as you can. I'm a big fan of having books on my shelf that allow me to look things up that maybe I'm not expert in yet, and I can pick those skills up over time. YouTube is a great resource. Balance and weigh things. Are you hearing something that just seems like it's trying to be really dramatic, or are you hearing what sounds like good, reasoned advice? You're going to have to figure that one out for yourself, but it's a valuable skill to have in and of itself. Where I live here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ferry system, because I do feel like it is potentially a benefit and potentially a risk. Our ferry system is the way that probably 95+% of people, goods, and services make it out to our islands from the mainland of Washington State. Ferry, that means that we can potentially limit the ingress of this virus if we are really wise about how to use that bottleneck. It also means that we might have an inherent limit on goods and services and people coming here that we want here. The ferry system operates with the requirement of a X number of Coast Guard certified staff on board. And before all this happened, we had issues with, somebody calls in sick and they realize, oh, shoot, we're one short for having the correct number of Coast Guard people on board. We don't sail. It happens every season or two here, where a boat of hundreds of people does not leave the dock because they do not have the right person on board. Kind of like I talked about the power system thing earlier. Somebody